Welcome to episode 30 of a facilitator's journey. I can't believe we've got to 30 episodes. Today I'm talking to Zita. She describes herself as a hypnotherapist, a coach, a systemic constellator, a facilitator. The conversation we have weaves our way through Zita's journey. She has never had a formal paycheck from a company. She has always been freelance, except for the 3 months she worked as an intern at university. She got paid then. But all the other time she's been a freelancer. She has worked in America and is going to share in this episode loads of lessons she learned of working in America and that American culture. She talks about the importance of understanding our systemic patterns. We talk about her family history and the impact that's had on her. So the invitation right now is for you to get a drink and to join me on the pink sofa. Enjoy this episode. Hey, Zita.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you today?
I'm really good, Kirsty. It's so good to be here with you. It's like, woo. Everybody's gone on summer holidays. I've got the house to myself and I get to chat to you.
I know, it's lovely. So this recording will be going out in October, November. Right now, Zita and I are sitting in T-shirts and it's really hot here in the UK as we record this at the end of July. So I'm just going to put that sort of as a point a point in time so you can understand why. Zita, welcome to a facilitator's journey. It's so lovely to have you here today. The first question I ask everybody is, how do we know one another?
Well, I can remember the first time I met you and where I met you, but I can't remember how I got there. And I think it was a connection who said, oh, you must come and meet Kirsty, but it was probably something to do with the whole partnership. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Anyway, it was round the corner from Hatton Garden in a studio, and you were running this fabulous workshop for facilitators. And I thought, oh, here's an opportunity to sharpen my knives and learn something more. And I came along.
I think that must have been around 2014, 2013?
Yeah,
No.
2014, 2015.
2015, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, 2015.
Yeah.
And it was always, and I think the connection, just to name it, is systemic constellations. So that's who the whole partnership are.
Yeah. And then, yes, it is through systemic constellations. Definitely, it was related to that. And I think you had done the organizational work, and I was doing the couples work as a workaround to doing organizational training.
Nice. And maybe a bit more backstory for people just to help them get context is, how do you describe what it is that you do?
Oh my God, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. So my official title is Certified Clinical Hypnotherapist, Coach, and Systemic Family Constellations Facilitator. So,
and what kind of work do you do?
So I work with individuals, couples, and I work with organizations, multinationals, charitable, health-related, and in the arts, and with policymakers. So I look at small systems, microsystems, and then I look at the bigger systems in which they're embedded, and I look at bigger systems and how they reflect each other and how we can bring them into systemic harmony rather than the assumed harmony we think consciously is right.
Wow.
Yeah.
My head slightly blows up when I talk to you. I'm like, oh, but I know what you do is cool. Tell the listeners, how long have you been doing this work for?
Well, officially, I have been practicing this work for, oh, I would say it's coming close to 16 years, because I was a
Mm.
hypnotherapist for a while beforehand, and I was trained in I was trained in Ericksonian hypnosis, which looks quite systemically in anyway and integrates with the foundations of systemic work. But I think if I really cast my mind back, I was always
Mm.
weirdly, mildly obsessed with patterns and human patterns and how human patterns intersect and interact with each other, because I was brought up as a Quaker. And in our Sunday school at Quakerism, they were always inviting us to think and look at ways of how we can bring peace between groups. And so our early training as young Quakers, which was destined for us to infiltrate big institutions and change them from within, had prepared me probably from about the age of 8.
I didn't. I would never. If you said to me a Quaker, they prepare you to infiltrate. I would never have put that word Quaker and infiltration in the same sentence.
Yes,
I
you
always thought
only
they'd be
know that word.
peaceful.
Well, it is peaceful. It's peaceful infiltration, but they are definitely, or they were in those days, about infiltration. I mean, and then I went to a
Mm.
school for girls, which was designed and created to create women who would go out into the world and look sweet, but infiltrate systems and change them.
Which actually you have done quite well, if you don't mind me saying so. Because what happened next? Like I was when I was prepping with Zita, we know each other well, so we had some good conversations, and I was like, "How long have you been self-employed?" And then what was your first memory of being self-employed?
Oh my God. I started my first business at 8. Actually, it was born out of Quaker Sunday School. And there were always all these kids, and they always trusted me to look after all of the kids. And then during the week, when the Quaker parents wanted additional support, they'd hire me to babysit. So I turned it into a business because my mother said it's not appropriate to do it for free. So that was my first taste of having a business, and setting up a business account, which in those days was my national insurance account, and saving and investing the money long term.
Yeah,
So from
love
eight
it.
from eight until I guess I was about 21, babysitting was one of my
Mm-hmm.
primary ways of making money.
Fair shout. I did that as well. Not from the age of 8, admittedly. From the age of 13 to 18, I babysat for a lot of my mum's friends and their young kids. I loved it.
I
But
loved
then
it
what
too.
happens? You carried on though, didn't you, in the vein of being self-employed, but in a very
Yeah,
different
I did. I mean,
industry.
even when I did other jobs, I would always do it as an independent contractor. I think I've had
Yeah.
an aversion probably to being tied down. And so I then, from spraying perfumes in stores at Harrods, somehow I ended up as a waitress in New York. And as from a waitress in New York, I got discovered by an editor at Vanity Fair magazine and became an independent assistant stylist at Vanity Fair. And then after a
Mm-hmm.
few months there, they gave me the Rolodex, the Vanity Fair Rolodex, and some headed paper. So
Right.
why don't you go out on your own? Because the world was changing at that point. MTV had just blown up, and there was this recognition of needing stylists and applying them to artists and going along the journey. And I was part of that wave. I ended up with a new band that had been signed by Motown Records. And suddenly I was no longer waitressing. I was running up and down, uptown, downtown, uh, doing record albums and record working with.
You were in a band,
No, I was styling a band, but
styling the band.
I became part of the dream team, and then put together, the hair and the makeup. And we were, the dream team that looked after this two-girl band from, one was from New Jersey and one was from uh, Brooklyn. So
Wow.
I've always been self-employed, freelance,
Employed.
which is
Yeah.
great. It's a bit of a hassle if you've got to hustle, But I learned that if you were just really good at what you did, people would always recommend
Yeah.
you and refer you, and you could actually create quite a
Yes.
successful business based on always being referable. So I always strive to be
Yes.
referable.
I absolutely agree. Quick question: have you ever worked in an organisation and had a monthly paycheck that sort of tied you in?
Oh yes. On my there was one summer in between the second year and the third year of university when I got my first visa for the US. I did this thing that was Camp America. I did Work America. And I managed to get this job at the Union Bank of Switzerland in the logistics and human resources department. And yeah, I was put on the payroll and I
Oh
got
my god!
this. Well, was it a weekly? Yeah, it was a monthly check. I was in the States for 3 months, and I got 3 checks from the Union Bank of Switzerland. They even offered to give me a green card, but at the time I was like, "Nah, I really like England." And then I realised, oh,
Um, I love. Can I just say something? Like you're my first guest who had to really pause to think about when have I ever been paid a monthly salary, and then when you do, it's for like an internship over the summer of in between your second and third year of university. So I think you're super unique in that you have always worked for yourself. Let's call it out. It's amazing. Like you've always had this way of operating that many people are listening to this podcast are working out for themselves in later life as they've chosen to step away from an organization. So I just want to applaud that because I think that's pretty incredible. Now you've talked about America.
yeah.
You talked about America, and you're being very coy, and I'm just going to name it. So you went on to become a model, is that correct? And you worked for MTV for a period of time.
Well, I worked. I had a show on MTV.
Even bigger. I had a show,
Yeah,
darling.
there were we only recorded 3 episodes, and only one of them aired. It was called Mission
Oh,
Makeover. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, it was called Mission Makeover, and I was co-hosting it with this really gorgeous male model who was also a singer. I've forgotten his name. Anyway, it will come back to me. And we had this show together, which was recorded down in Santa Barbara. My job was to, someone would write into MTV and say, I want to look like this celebrity. And my job was to dress them and make them over like this celebrity. Because that was
That's
what I
so
did.
cool. Do you think you were before your time? What's it? There's TV shows came after that, didn't they? Like in their abundance of makeover shows. I think you were just before your time, Zita.
Yeah, I was before my time.
Renaissance woman.
So, in the absence of some kind of template, I think the real problem was
Mm.
basically I'm really quite serious. I can goof off, but you need to goof off a lot for these shows. It's nothing's kind of taken seriously, and being British, I don't really approve of things that aren't taken seriously.
Oh, I love that about you. And she is very serious. It scares me sometimes. But I wanted to talk about you do like I find you because you are serious, but in a like your worth, your value. You're like, let's just cut the bullshit. Let's just get down and like be serious and talk about things. And I think this is one of the things I wanted to ask you about is like doing business in America, because you said you took quite a few lessons from doing business in America and then being able to lean into that when you've come back and set up your business in the UK. And would love it if you could just share some of your learnings. Like, what is it like doing business in America?
Well, the foundation is completely different because there's no welfare system in America. You turn up with your British accent and maybe a couple of grand in your bank account, but if there's nothing to catch you. So that was the first thing that set the approach that I was going to have to take. I can't afford to fail. And because of the type of people who are drawn to go to the US, there is always someone ready to take your job, your clients, your apartment, your boyfriend, your husband. So you live in a way where you've got to fight for your supper, not to kill, but you have to wake up each day with your purposes to make money and survive. And the same way they are with the design of their cars, the bigger your car on the road, the more dominance and power you have. So you have to build a circle of people and connections that are on your side and you're on their side. And there's this mutual exchange of giving support, recommending, referring each other. So it really depends on building your own system around you of people and good contacts and connections, and then having a really strong work ethic. Because if you mess up, it lets down the people who have recommended or referred you, and they won't do it again. So what I really valued about the work ethic of America is that they have this work ethic. And it can be tough, but when you're kind of in your 20s and 30s and you've got a ton of energy, really all you want to do is make money, have fun, and discover the world and be like a fat cat, or not. But yeah, that was for me the first thing that was really the absolute game changer. There's no social security, and my parents have always kind of had an attitude: we're not bailing you out just because you can't be bothered to get up and go to work. So that, as my starting point, was really helpful. And I think because it's a pioneer country, it was discovered by people who were persecuted and exiled out of England and arrived there, and it wasn't necessarily a friendly environment. So you kind of got to smoke the peace pipe with people. You've got to have good social relationships with people, and with yourself. You need to have really clear boundaries of what is and isn't acceptable. And going out as a freelancer, you set the terms before you leave the house. That was something else I remember being taught.
Tell me more about that.
You don't even start to work until it's agreed and signed off how much you're getting paid, when you are getting paid, what are the terms and conditions and the hours. All of that is clarified first. So there's no there's no wishy-washy stuff at the end. I mean, I love it in America. I learned to put on my invoices that if you paid late, there was a 4% interest added for every day late. And if they paid late, they paid it, but they didn't pay late because no one wants to pay more in America than they have to. So things like that, they create goodwill and they create trust and respect. And I know we sort of have that in England, but it was fascinating coming back to England and realizing how kind of we're a bit wishy-washy and sloppy about some things. And that interferes with... Go on.
I think we can be quite apologetic, even though it's important. Like it's needed, the terms and conditions, the agreement, like the payment, like how long it's going to take to pay. So, for example, I know just now my finance manager had to chase payment of some expenses that were quite expensive because it was a flight to Saudi Arabia. I can guarantee, knowing Vic, she might have said, "Oh, sorry, could you just tell us when we're going to get paid?" Because we're like that. We use that language. There's an apology attached, even though we've spent money to train their people. So we need to get paid.
And it's like, why are we sorry?
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
I mean, you can be polite without using the word sorry, and you can assert yourself. This is the word I learned in America, is assert yourself, which is perhaps why when coming back here, some people perceive me as being a little bit scary. Is
because you assert yourself. How does that show up in doing business? How do you, to imagine working with a client, how do you assert yourself? Like what does that look like, sound like, feel like?
Well, that's really interesting because one, you're getting a feed from the client before you start working of how they interact. So you're kind of mimicking, but without undermining the importance and the value of the relationship between both of you. So I'm also setting the template of, well, these are the ways in which I work. Is there anything you want to add? But I'm not apologizing for how I'm being. I am polite, and probably politer than I would be in the US, which is much more direct in the way that you speak in the US. Whereas English language, we do build in little buffers and cushions. So I think I have learned to speak both languages, and sometimes use a bit more of an American language if things aren't showing up on time. And then I'll get oh, I'm so sorry, we'll get this done by the end of the day. And it gets done by the end of the day and everybody's happy.
Can I ask you a question? I really like what you said about before I do the work with my client, I set the template. And I think it's something all of us could, I know for myself, I can learn to be even better at. But I'm just curious, what is it for you in particular in your world of work, what are some of the things that you are putting out there to the client? Say, like, this is my way of working. Like, and how do you phrase it? Because I often find if I've got the language, like some phraseology, it feels easier, even though, and I know what I want to say, but I can't seem to say it because I get all tongue-tied.
Well, I think, that's a very interesting question, because I don't do much in written form. I do most of that by an introductory call. So I'm directing the client very early on into an introductory call, and how I am speaking in person, which is quite firm and direct, translates well in person, because then they can see I'm a human being just like them, and so on and so forth. But I guess it's being clear about when we're going to start, what is it they expect, what is it they want, and then me being clear about what they can expect and what they will want. It may not look like what they initially think. So we're getting very clear on what are their expectations, what's realistic, what's possible, and what the cost is going to be, and what the unseen costs are, and what is likely to happen.
Ooh, my eyes have just gone up for those listening. Unseen costs. What's an example of an unseen cost?
Well, people have an idea before they come to particularly systemic work of what the outcome should look like. But systemic constellations gives us a picture of what is really possible. And managing people's expectations of outcomes means that people think that change, especially if it's going to be for the better, will be some smooth, warm, fuzzy experience. And it's not. So I'm having to manage their expectations by saying it could be uncomfortable. It will be uncomfortable for some people, and some people won't like it. I will do my best to mitigate and manage that by through creating a process. And that's helpful, because it nearly always is, especially if you're working with teams. There's one person saying, I don't want to do that. And, but you've prepared them for it. And when they say, I don't want to do that, it's like, oh, that's great information. Thank you for bringing that. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, my refusal to do it is useful information. And then they're engaged. Nice. So I think there are lots of things, one's feeling one's way into it, but it starts with me being very clear about what is possible and what I'm willing to do. And, sometimes people come to me and they think they can co-opt systemic constellations to meet their political belief or their particular agenda. And it's like, it's not that kind of party.
It just doesn't happen that way.
Just so you know.
I think it's really interesting. Yeah, we'll talk about systemic constellation. I think another time. I think I need to do a whole podcast on that, so you can come back and have that dance. What I find really interesting, and it's making me think about my practice of working with my own clients, is being more deliberate in having those upfront conversations about ways of working, expectations. I do it. I don't think I'm clear enough about it listening to you. Yeah. And I hide behind, a lot of written documents. So if you look at my written documents, i.e. the proposal, the statement of work, our terms and conditions, it's all intimated in there. It's really clear, like, how we're going to do things. And yes, we'll have had the briefing call and chatted for me to get that information in the first place. I think I'm missing probably a step that says, okay, now we've agreed to the terms, we've agreed to work together. Let's now talk about what it's going to look like, sound like, and feel like in reality. Let's have that.
Yes. I mean, you know, I'm talking about a process that I come to, which is nearly always organic. I'm always coming because someone has worked with me somewhere else and said, oh my God. And they'll call someone at another organization and say, you have to work with her. Or they've worked with me before solo and said, I need to bring you into my organization. So that does make the difference because the intermediary already knows me and is doing most of the communicating for me. I don't actually cold call or pitch myself much at all, if ever, never. I mean,
That's interesting. Go on.
I've got the stuff that I do on social media, and because of the type of language and the way that the things that I say on social media, that will draw people who are looking for that kind of, oh. But I'm not going to get anybody who's like far out on the wishy-washy end of, oh, let's try something. That's not my crowd.
That's very true. I think that's true for all of us as well when it comes to using social media. I think it's something for us all to consider. Is it's a shop window. It's an opportunity for you to share with others who you are, what you do. It's for you to lay your stall out, and then for people to like come and just check you out. Stalk has been a phrase I've heard, but you know, they want to just know who you are, and it takes a while for people to sometimes step forward. Now, based purely just on social media, sort of just looking.
I mean, the lurkers, I find, can often lurk for quite a while just watching. And then they're also seeing who's interacting, and then those connections will either reinforce or not.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think a lot of business, it's been my truth anyway, has come through referrals. Either people I know, referrals, recommendations, one of the same thing. I think I could count on one hand the big corporate clients who've come through just from them following me on LinkedIn or even Instagram and just saying, can we have a conversation with you?
Yeah.
Very, very small. But it allows me, by being present on both those platforms, to be front of mind when people then go, oh, I have a need for a facilitator, or I want to learn to be better at facilitation, or I'm looking for a community to hang out with. That's what I hope anyway, she says.
Well, I think you do a wonderful job of that.
Oh, bless you. I like that. Anything else you learned from your time in working particularly in an American business culture that you think would be helpful for people to know about?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, you know, when I was there and I was working, it was like the 90s and the 2000s. So in that time, apart from some silly module that I did at university about women, I had no idea that because I was a woman or because of the color of my skin, there were barriers to entry. So I never approached as if there were barriers to entry. And I think that keeping that even today is really valuable. Yeah, my mindset is, why wouldn't you want me? Not, do you know what I mean? So I think there is in America there's there's a real respect and value for people who just come with a clean openness. I want to work and I want to do this, and I am really good at this, and this is why you need me, which is quite opposite to England. Oh, possibly
Yeah.
not. And I could be is completely different side of the coin. And the two don't work either or. I mean, the wonderful thing I loved when I was in the States was there was a brain drain. There were tons of Brits taking these £99 flights at the time. So you would see everybody that you'd kind of been hanging out with in London, and there were lots of people doing the same thing, converting from this, oh, sorry, I exist, to, hey, I'm here.
Yeah. Oh,
And I
nice.
think that transcends all things, in that Americans love to invest in people who are invested in themselves. And if you are
Yeah.
invested in yourself, as in you believe in your value and their worth, they'll go, I'm buying that. They buy in.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just one last thing. What I think I've suddenly had a mini aha on listening to you speak is a lot of what we're told through social media, how to show up, how to be, how to the old language of hustle, has come from America. And therefore, when it came over the water and landed on British shores, initially a lot of us were like, ew, oh, you want me to do what? You want me to put my face up there? You want me to talk to a camera? You want me to, like, we would have said in your face, which you're not. And I guess I think because a lot of big business ideas have come out of the States in terms of the social media element of it. Therefore, yeah, that's where some of the discomfort may have come from many people listening to this who are Brits thinking, oh, how do I show up? It's because it's just from that
I mean,
cultural perspective.
I agree. And I think, but the in your face thing is new, because Americans are actually quite humble and quite sweet. They're very wholesome and incredibly polite, in a lot of ways politer than we are. And that gets confused with the brashness of America, what we see in TV, which is not the same as the reality of America.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
reality of America
That's
is often, hey, dude, how are you? Yeah, I was wondering, like, let's get together. I got this great idea. Let's do it. Which is a different temperature to very
yeah.
different.
I'm not going political. I've just got thoughts going through my head. I'm going to delete myself. I'm going to change tact in our conversation.
Yes.
We were talking about how do you know where to play? Like what lane to play in? What does that language even mean? Like where are you? Like, what do you talk about? How do you know what to talk about? And you and I were having some interesting conversations about this, because you said for years you kept your head below the radar and you didn't
Yes.
come up and share.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
guess I'm curious what.
I've always been quite outspoken and direct, but in my memory, the world was far less political, or I was just not that interested. I was just interested in having fun, living my life, doing a great job, and hanging out with people afterwards, and then making enough money to pay my rent and my bills and see the world.
Yeah.
And the world is quite different now, and probably also as a result, I'm different. So this concept of what is my lane, for example, started really to kind of come up with George Floyd. All of a sudden, it was like it was thrust upon you that as a Black person, you must think about this and you must talk about this and you must talk about it in this way and this way and this way. And I was like, well, no, because none of those boxes fit who I am. And so what I uncomfortably realized was that the dehumanizing aspect of identity had shut out and excluded a whole raft of people, the majority actually of the people. And I'm not talking about the global majority, I'm talking about literally the majority of the people who are not the result of inbreeding and come from families where the mother and the father are from different places. It may be a different village, it may be a different country, it might be a different culture, but that's what the majority of people are. And so I've been drawn to talk to that because I'm not just Black, for example. So it doesn't make sense for me to just address Black issues. When I try to, nobody Black apart from my own family members show up anyway. So
Can you describe your ancestry?
yeah,
Can you
so
describe your ancestry?
my father is East African, and he is half Tutsi and half Bachiga, which is basically, in the larger concept, all one of the same clan. But the clans have totems, and to address too much intermarrying, they get labeled in different ways so that they can arrange marriages where there's enough genetic difference to not cause inbreeding. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that's quite a sensible thing to do.
Yes.
And the larger clan has existed. It was the first empire to arrive in Africa in 950 BC from Portugal.
Wow.
Right. Just to give context.
Gosh.
Yes. My mother is from Barbados.
Yeah.
Her ancestors are, get this, which is very interesting. My mother's ancestors, the African ones, are from the same clan as my father's, whose ancestors sold my mother's ancestors into slavery several hundred years ago. The other part of my mother's ancestry is from slaves who were brought from Ireland and Wales to Barbados in the 1600s.
Bloody hell.
Yes. My parents met up the road from where my mother's ancestors in Wales came from, in this little town called Preston in Lancashire. So they re-met as a result of the so-called Windrush era.
Yeah.
And that's how I was born. That's my ancestry. So I'm a heaving mix, literally, of East African and, on my mother's side, Jewish, Welsh, and Irish and African, East African.
Wow. We're not on an ancestry conversation here, but I just think that the fact that you have done that research as well, and I know it's been an important part of your personal journey and development. I find it incredible to sit here and to hear that. And I also know that your now husband has got Portuguese ancestry.
Yeah.
Going Portuguese, and that just went through my head as well. Like the fact that you two have then met and come together, and what's that about? But that's another conversation.
I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But I mean, and it's just fascinating, because when you look at what the connection is, it again gives a different perception of history that we've completely erased, and we will create problems for ourselves by having erased it. Anyway, that's another conversation.
But you're writing a book on it, aren't you?
Well, I am. I'm more really writing a book about migration, immigration.
Yeah.
Because no one talks about it and its effects. And most of what we really kind of see are the effects of thousands of years of migration of humans. And you can call it colonization, or you can call it forced migration, or you can call it slavery, or whatever you want to call it. But all of these are movements designed to move people around the world and diversify the species so that we can go on in a healthy way.
When's the book coming out? I feel like I need to read it.
Oh, well, it's on hold at the moment because my agent's got some personal family issues that she has to attend to. So whilst I'm waiting, I've decided to go to Barbados and start filming or making a mini documentary about the people from the voices of the people in Barbados, because that history has also been erased. And, American history has kind of taken precedence. But without the history of Barbados, we don't really understand the rest of a lot of what follows.
Yeah. By the way, this is what I love about you, Zita, and having these conversations. It's like, I've written is it written, by the way, the book? The book's written?
No. We're still in development.
Okay, but the fact is, you know, I'm gonna have a book. I'm in development. I get that sort of, but because of what is happening over here, I've decided though I'm just going to get on with it. But I'm going to go and make a documentary, you know, and I'm just going to get myself together, and I'm going to go over there and do that. Probably in the meantime, listeners, she's also running her practice and working one to one with her clients. She's also just doing some workshops and working with some organizations. You also work with your partner, your husband at times, and do work in the space of law, because he's a barrister. Like you have so many different avenues in which you operate, and I think that it's just, I love it. I absolutely love it. And there's like, you don't sit down and have downtime. I know you do, because you know that's really important, but there's always something going on.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think one, raising children inspires you, right? They're not my children, but they're my children.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to myself, what can I do to support the world that they're growing up in? What can I do to inspire them to live their passion and their dreams? And if living your passion and your dreams doesn't make you want to jump up each day and think of different ways of bringing it, then that's a different way of being, but it's not really who we are. And I think that is what you inherit when you're descended from migrants. They came for a better life. My job is to keep that going, a better life,
I love
which is
that.
really just another way of a different life. So
Yeah.
I'm lucky and fortunate to have that opportunity to live in a country where I have access to do those things. And the knock on effect is I have family who live in another country who are beginning to have access to those things. And I want to inspire them and say there are no obstacles. And there literally aren't. So it's doable because I love what I'm doing.
Mm. And I think something you just said there as well is that resonates for me is, we can tell people to wear blue in the face, oh, you should do this and you should do that, and if you act like this or you act like that, it will benefit you. But people won't listen. I think the one way you can inspire people is just by doing it for yourself, and just show up and keep doing what you believe in. And that passion piece, that purpose piece is, I can totally relate to that. That's what motivates me. Some people look at me sometimes and go, why are you doing, like I've just announced SoFest, which is going to be a festival for facilitators and trainers. And people are just like, some of my friends are like, are you crazy? Like, why are you doing that? That's going to cost you. It's going to cost you energetically, financially, potentially. I'm like, yeah, but it's going to be amazing. And it's about creating that space for all of us to come together and learn and grow. And,
Right.
and so I'm like, you've just got to do it. Because if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it.
Exactly. And I think that's so exciting. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that as well. I think it's wonderful. Uh, it's such a privilege to have the energy to do things,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
If you've got a pulse,
That is
like
true.
Grandma used to say, and you can do things, do them. Make sure you rest, have a nap here and there, take a little holiday here. I mean, I come from women who live to 106. I'm just like, at 55, I'm
Oh
just getting
my,
warmed up by their standards. It's like, you're just a little
oh my
pick-me.
God. Wow, you could live for another 50 years. How does
Yeah.
that feel?
Well, I like the idea. I mean, my stepfather as well is enormously inspirational because after a triple bypass at the age of 59 and with three children, all under the age of 16, he started a business.
At 59, good on him.
Yeah, he started a
Good on
business
him.
at 59 and yeah, it grew and grew and he started it on the dining room table. And by the time he died at the age of 90, it had a staff of 50 and was doing international distribution of vegetarian whole foods and organic foods.
Wow. Good on
So
him.
I come from
Amazing.
people who like to do stuff.
Yeah. We're not going to keep you back, are we, Zita? We're not going to keep you down
I
now.
don't think so. No.
But it's definitely a quality that we need when we work for ourselves is you have to have that inner self motivation to get up each day. And it's interesting, like how you said, one of the reasons I do it is so that my stepchildren are inspired to do it for themselves and that they can see what is possible. I also know something we both believe in is like part of why we do what we do as well will come from our ancestors and our genetics, and it's part of us, and we've got a pattern inside of us that runs to that. And then there'll just be the love of your work, like your passion
Yeah,
for what you do.
absolutely. And it is that kind of inherited stories. So my great great grandfather and his wife, my great great grandmother, they bought the plantation that owned them.
Oh my god, what is this in Barbados?
Yes. And
Wow.
we were raised the message from generations. I mean, I wasn't even born, but I know the message. Remember, you're a Bavel. It doesn't matter
Say
who
that
any.
again.
Remember, you're a Bavel. That was their name, Bavel. They were Bavels, and
I think
and and it's that was passed down. Those stories of they came from you know this nothing of being laborers, and they saved their money and they bought the plantations when England was selling them off for cheap at the end of slavery. They took advantage of the situation to buy the land that they knew, which has now turned out to be a
wow.
whole village. And all the family have this place that they can always return to. And that inspiration is what drives me.
I love that.
It's not because I'm
Now
black,
we could
it's not because I'm blue, it's because I'm a Bavel.
Val. Now we could carry on talking, and that would be one of the longest podcasts I think I've ever recorded. I'm gonna bring this part of the conversation to a pause. I'm gonna pause it because I think we can definitely revisit it another time, and I hope that
Sure.
happens. At the end of every podcast, I ask my guests 4 questions. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Sure.
What advice would you give to someone starting out?
Go for it.
Love it. Who do you follow in social media land that you think others should too?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a really interesting question because I mean, I follow people, but I don't follow. I kind of post and get off. But from
Okay.
a female business building perspective, my favorite Barbadian, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Is she Barbadian?
Yep.
I did not know that. It takes a lot to surprise me sometimes in this life. Wow. Huh. What book or podcast do you recommend at this time?
Oh, well, actually, the one that's kind of come back up to the top of my uh, list is "Leading from the Emerging Future" by Otto Scharmer.
Love a bit of Otto. What is it about?
It's about how we can, sort of through a systemic lens, he's slightly different, but it is sort of really about systemic, how we can move from ecosystems to ecosystems. So that
Okay.
with this idea of unity and peace and love is lovely, but it's not going to happen. So a more realistic thing is to stop with the ego and this I and they and must and blah, blah, blah. And yes, we are individuals because if you're not an individual, you can't connect to a community. So this idea that we're not individuals is sweet, but magical. And so he kind of gives us tangible ideas and concepts that are rooted in reality, not in fairy tale or magical thinking or pixie dust. And I like reality.
I love it.
It's Really
love it.
helpful when you want to create meaningful change.
Okay, I'm going to go and pick him up again. And then final question. How have you invested in yourself or your business to support you in moving forward?
Oh, well, I'm going on holiday. I mean, these days going to Barbados is a serious investment. It's a big chunk of money, but
Mm.
I will be removed from all of the paths of things that will make me do small things and enter a big escape where I have this enormous expanse of sea. It's a tiny island dropped right between the Atlantic and the Caribbean. All you can do there is dream about possibilities.
Beautiful. I love that as an answer as well. Like, investing in yourself is go on holiday. And
Yeah.
on that note, Zita, thank you so much for being my guest today on A Facilitator's Journey. It's been great to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for your fantastic questions. And I always envy your red lipstick.
Oh, legend. Thanks, Zita. I'm always in awe of Zita when we have a conversation. I find it fascinating. Like, she's done so much research on her ancestors and heritage and can see how her behaviors and the way she does things descends from different family members, her mum, her dad, her grandparents. I think that's incredible. I think what she shared with us about working in America is really invaluable, especially for us Brits. Not from a case of, well, if you're going to work in America, behave like this. I think there's some really simple messages we can take that are be clear up front as to what the project is about, what is in, what is out. Talk about your terms and conditions. Have it as a conversation. Don't just rely on writing things down and assuming that people are going to see that. And don't be apologetic. Be unapologetic, I think is what Zita would say. So yeah, it was a great conversation. We'll maybe do another one with her about what is systemic constellations, because I really appreciate she and I spoke about that quite a lot, because we both are practitioners and we understand what that is. If you want to go and do some research on that, just Google systemic constellation. You could look at the whole partnership, CRC, and any work by John Whittington is always very helpful to give you some information as to what it is all about. If you've enjoyed the conversation today, please give us a like, give us a star, leave us a review. If there's anything you want to tell me, just send us an email. That would be amazing. Kirsty.lewis at schoolofacilitation.com, or find us on the website. But as ever, a big thank you for being here, for supporting us, and for sharing in this journey of the podcast. I hope you have a good day, whatever's happening next, and thank you for listening.